All right, morning everyone. Welcome to another episode of Market Trading. I am your host, Tone Vays. Today is Thursday. Welcome to Thursday. I can't wait to see what the government did with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Are you interested? Not seeing the numbers? I should do a poll. Let's do a poll. I haven't seen the numbers yet. I hope you haven't seen the numbers. Let me see if the poll's right. Start QA. No, start poll. And the poll is, did Biden, I'm just going to say Biden, did Biden, Biden doesn't know what he's doing, right? Did Biden's handlers sell, did Biden handlers mess with SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve? Do I need to spell it out? I think you guys know what SPR is. I'm going to say sold over 500,000 barrels. Did not mess with it. And if it's less than 500,000, it didn't mess with it. Okay, and then bought more than 500,000 barrels. That's our cutoff, 500,000. Okay, and I'm going to start the poll. I'm going to tell you what I think, but I want to see what you guys think first. Let's see if we can get how many people are watching. We got about 70 watching. Let's see if we can get 50 votes. People are saying vote over 500. Now, if you know the number, if you know the answer, please don't vote. I really want to see an honest assessment here. And I don't want to sway you guys with what I think, but I'm going to tell you what I think after I look at the oil price. Okay, we're going to look at the oil price first, and then I'm going to take a wild guess. Let's go to the charts. Okay. Long-term view hasn't changed. We're not going to talk about it today. Oh, this is a great chart. We're going to get back to this. We're going to get back to that chart. Let's see what all these other charts are. What the hell do I have up here? Oh, right. So we brought this up last time. I looked at both of these charts, and someone already asked the question. Tone, what do you think? Buying 4 months before the halving and selling 18 months before the halving. I think buying 4 months before the halving is a little too last minute, because you can see that there's always been a pump closer than, like, maybe that's 4 months away. So this is, say, December. And what is it over here? This is the halving in December, and this is October, right? So if you bought 4 months before the halving, you were able to capitalize on this little pump, but you would not have been able to capitalize on this big pump in the very first cycle. And you would not have been able to capitalize on this move from 6,000 to 10,000 in the last halving cycle, because you can't assume the COVID crash is going to happen again, okay? Like, I think this was a fluke. I think the low should have been 6,000 if the government did not shut down the world for COVID. So I think buying 4 months before the halving is a bit premature. Am I still streaming? I am, right? Let me see. Am I live? Or is my connection having an issue? Like, okay, my bad. All right. I'm good. Okay. So, I think buying 4 months before the halving is a bit premature. I think buying more like 8 months before the halving is a little safe. A little bit safe. Okay. So, let's continue. I'm probably going to close this chart. I don't need all of them. I don't need this all the time. And this is the same thing, only the most recent ones. So it's kind of cleaner. It's a bit cleaner. I think buying 4 months before the halving is a bit too late. Selling 18 months after the halving is reasonable, but I would just keep an eye on the price and see when it's ready to break to the downside. Our allocation chart. Oh, no, that's next. Sorry. The weekly. Well, the MRI is certainly working so far. Let's see how the week ends. So far, I am bullish, but we need a little bit more. We got our new candle. This is our candle starting today. The moving averages are almost crossed over. They're almost crossed. So here's the deal. I'm willing to go back into the bullish position, not 100%, but I'm willing to go back to the bullish position if I feel that this candle is going to close above both moving averages. And at the moment, can I pin this? I can't pin it. No. I can't pin it. Okay. At the moment, I don't know if this candle is going to close above the moving averages. We still have 3.5 days to go. So I'm going to go ahead and wait. What 3 countries do you think will have most global influence after Western hegemony dies? Well, that's easy. China, India, and Russia. It's very easy. You know, the big commodity producer, Russia, the big, what do you call it, exporter, China, and the rise, hopefully, great power, India, with their population and their education system and just, you know, demographics. India, Russia, China, that's a very easy question. I don't think the Middle East is going to be in a position to, you know, provide global leadership. I think it'll be close. The Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, maybe the UAE, they're going to be in that second tier. Middle East, UAE, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and then possibly Brazil, if they get their politics in order, you know. Real election Marxism. So Brazil and Saudi Arabia will be on that second tier. Good question, though. I really want to discuss it. I mean, Turkey wants to be, you know, at the top of that leaderboard, but I don't think that's going to happen. Germany and France think they'll have some power. They won't. They'll have none. The UK will probably have almost none. And the US will be in that. The US will still be there, right? Like, even if the US breaks up into a few countries, 1 or 2 of those countries will still have a pretty big say if they want to say, right? It's a good discussion. It's a really good discussion. The US could still have lots of influence after it goes down. It depends how it goes down. It really does. Ever read Gulag Archipelago? The moment a sentence starts with ever read, the answer is probably no. I'm not a reader, guys. I'm sorry. I listen to stuff, some books, but I get my knowledge in other ways. There's other ways of learning about stuff than reading. I know it seems counterintuitive, but it's not the 1800s. There are other ways to earn knowledge other than reading. It wasn't the case for our 5,000-year history, but it is the case now. All right, Tone Vays website. You guys know where to find my on-demand videos. You guys know where to get the MRI. I got other stuff to talk about. Financial Summit coming to the UAE, only about 6 weeks away. Wow, time is flying. Come and join us at the Financial Summit to talk all things trading and investing, and come hang out with us to talk about Bitcoin. Nevada in December. Where's my website? There's a really good question. I don't want to dive into this question. I just don't want to really talk about Bitcoin on this channel anymore. Why is the Lightning Network so much more popular than Liquid? It is an incredible question. I would love to be part of a panel discussion conference on this topic. It's a good question. Why? Liquid should be a lot more popular. I'm not saying Lightning should be less popular. I'm saying Liquid should be a lot more popular than it is. It should never be more popular than Lightning, but it should definitely be more popular than it is. We had an incredible Twitter space yesterday. It should be out on YouTube any hour now. It was myself and Chris Chiavaco, who is absolutely excellent. We had a great discussion. One of the topics for discussion was this chart. It is kind of my chart, but Chris wrote an amazing article about something similar to this chart. He is anticipating bull market. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's the anticipation. He's using demographics as the reason for the big bull market. I did not use demographics. I did not come up with this chart. I saw a very similar chart like this back in like 2014. And I said, you know what? This chart needs to be in a way that it can always be referenced. So I redid this chart on TradingView. It took me a couple of days to do this. I need to add another war that the US is involved in, and that is, of course, the Ukrainian war. The US, in my view, the US started it. I know you can debate. Russia started it. America started it. America started in 2014 when they had a coup to overthrow a democratically elected Ukrainian government. And that set Ukraine and Russia on a path to a military conflict, which the US is very happy to support, support, and hopefully not get to finish. Let's put it that way. I hope the stream is doing well, because on my end, it's questionable. It really is. And there's so much in this chart. We tweeted it out. I don't really want to get into the details of the chart because that would be an entire video of its own. But I pretty much came up with the view that the stock market is going to go 10x since 2013, when we broke out to a new all-time high. And that's when I kind of realized the historical nature of the markets, and the stock market will be going to a 10x move, just like it did in the 1980s and 90s. And people continue to not believe in this possibility. People think there's a 0 chance of this happening. And I think there is a huge high probability of this happening. This arrow is done, which is great. The US lost in Vietnam, and they had to get the hell out of there. And now they're, doing the same stupidity over in Ukraine. Okay, so where's my Twitter? There's my Twitter. Can I find the damn Twitter tab? I'm going to talk about oil first, then we're going to look at the news. So let's move on. And then we can talk some more geopolitics. I really don't mind. What is this? This is Oh, Bitcoin versus the dollar on a daily chart. Haven't looked at the oscillators in a while. The RSI is doing great. The CMF could be better. The MACD is doing pretty good. And look at the funding rate. The funding rate is favoring the bulls. Today is a great day for the market. We have a green star candle on the MRI. The MRI is flipping bullish on the daily chart. I have needed this box. I really wanted this box to be an incredible buy the dip, but if we never make it to this box, I would probably be even happier because I would rather buy the breakout trade than the perfect dip. I don't care if I get to buy Bitcoin at 24,000 or 23.5. I'd rather buy Bitcoin at 29,000 and watch it to 100K without ever putting me in a negative position. When you chase and buy the dip, it can always go lower and now you don't know what to do. But when you buy the perfect breakout, you are never at risk of losing money. It's kind of like a boxer. Sometimes all you need to do to win the fight is not get punched in the face, right? If you don't get hit, you're going to win the fight. Floyd Mayweather made a career out of not getting hit. Oh, Bitcoin on a 4-hour looks like our little pump is taking a break. Look what happened the last time Bitcoin hit an MRI 4-hour top, and wasn't anything to sneeze at. So keep in mind that a pullback down to 26,200 is very, very possible and in the cards. Surprise, GBTC discount is not rallying on this pump. I am bullish on natural gas. Here we go with the oil. Let's look at the oil. I hope my chart isn't frozen. Yeah, there is an arrow back there. Oh, that was a daily arrow. That's me expecting the prices to go higher because of this green star candle following an MRI top. This is great. I have to extend this arrow, guys. Well, I'm just going to delete it. It's fine. I don't need to prove it. It's an extension C, but look at this. Now we have to go to the weekly chart. We're going to analyze how many votes do we have in the poll. The poll is 82 votes. Let's get 18 more votes in there, guys. There's a poll up there. Hopefully you don't know. I have not seen the numbers. I'm going to tell you what I think. And we'll see if I'm right. I'll tell you what I would vote for. I'm waiting for a few more votes. We have 200 people watching. Let's get 100 votes in there for what did the Biden administration do with the strategic oil reserve? The week we are interested in is this week. See, on this week right here, the week of August 28th, the government bought 700 or 800,000 barrels of oil. This is a very small bullish candle, okay? So without swaying the vote, I'm going to say that the government did not mess with the oil reserve above or below 500,000 barrels. I think that the government bought about 300,000 to 400,000 barrels of oil. Let's see if I'm right. Let's go get the number. I have not seen the number. I'm going to say they bought between 300,000 and 400,000 barrels. Drum roll. And the answer is, oh, I was close. Oh, I got it. Holy shit. Look at this. Look at this. Let's put it in the spreadsheet. Wow, I nailed it. I said between 300,000 and 400,000 barrels of oil. You guys are going to think that I cheated. I did not cheat. I simply looked at the price of oil and how it performed last week, and I made an educated guess on how much oil the Biden administration bought or sold, and I missed it by 10,000 barrels. God damn it. I said between 3 and 400,000 barrels, and the answer is 290. 290. Okay. So again, what does this prove? What does it prove? That I was able to look at the price of oil, me, some random guy who does YouTube videos for a living and aren't even watched by all that many people, right? This goes to show you that you have all of these like analysts that I don't know what the hell they're doing. If I can simply look at a price chart, I can look at a candle, and I can tell you what the federal government's doing, okay? And this goes back to these arguments that people have. I just had this argument with this guy that blames everything on the Fed in like Twitter Spaces, right? And he's like, if only you get rid of the Fed, suddenly all of our financial problems go away. And I'm like, no, it won't, because just because it doesn't mean that it's like Order 66 in Star Wars to make all of our politicians suddenly not interested in printing money. You know, life doesn't work that way, right? So it's incredible what you can tell by simply looking at a candlestick. Okay, this little bullish candlestick probably bought oil, but not too much. Okay, now I don't know how this candle is going to end, and we're going to take another educated guess next week on Thursday. Damn it, I was off by 10,000 barrels. It's close though, close. Yeah, but it is interesting how, I mean, I did explain what did not, that's what it means. If you have a choice that's over and you have a choice that's under, then everything else is in between. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, that's right. It says sold over or bought over. Okay, yeah. Yeah, they didn't sell any oil. Oh, voting now makes no sense. I'm going to end the poll. G20 meeting mentioned that they want to collect taxes on crypto assets. Yeah, good luck. Yeah, good luck with that. All right, let's move on. Gold. Gold is not interesting at the moment. We're moving on. Stock market ready for that massive breakout. And the daily chart. On the daily chart of the stock market, it's looking really good. September is a bad month. September is also a monthly MRI sell, but on a daily scale, the break of the prior swing high is very bullish, and we have a green star candle on the MRI. These are very bullish things, and it's likely dragging Bitcoin along with it for the ride to the upside. Yeah, I don't mind taking a look at the euro. I am very bearish on the euro. We just got a bearish signal on alphanumerics. We're in a red wave of alphanumerics. This is the weekly chart. And the MRI gave you a warning candle. This looks very bad for the euro. The euro is breaking below a prior swing low. It was looking great. It needed to hold this prior swing low. Because it made a prior swing high and it didn't make a lower swing high, it made a higher swing high. The euro will need to make a lower high. So I'm not expecting a crash in the euro. What I am expecting, however, is a drop into an MRI buy on a weekly scale, a pullback to the moving averages, creating a lower swing high, followed by shit hitting the fan. This is my euro projection. Oops. This is my euro projection. Candles, arrows are a bit thick. They get in the way. There you go. That's my euro projection. Let's go look at the Russian ruble. This is the ruble versus the euro. We also have ruble versus the dollar. Ruble versus the dollar continues to devalue. I continue to say that the main reason for ruble struggles against the dollar is the success of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. We can talk about it more, but the counteroffensive is now going on 3 months. I think the counteroffensive is being low expectations for the Ukrainian counteroffensive. The Ukrainian counteroffensive has exceeded my expectations. Okay, therefore, in my opinion, the Ukrainian offensive has been somewhat successful. And I can explain in detail as to why I think the Ukrainian offensive has been successful. And if it continues to be equally as successful for another 5 to 6 months, it could create some serious problems for the Russian Federation. So the Russian Federation needs to reverse the current success of the Ukrainian offensive. And if you guys like, maybe after a few more things, we can discuss why I feel that the Ukrainian offensive has been successful. It's a very debatable topic. And the Ukrainian currency remains fully supported by the US government. And the longer this Ukrainian offensive remains, in my opinion, successful, the Ukrainian currency will be supported by the US government, but eventually it will hyperinflate, because I still do not expect the Ukrainian offensive to continue to be this impressive for the rest of the year. I think towards the end of the year, tide will turn, but I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure anymore. From what I saw, Elon is handing over Starlink to the U.S. authorities to use in Ukraine. That's what I saw. I could be wrong. I've been a little busy to really keep up with the Russia-Ukraine situation in the kind of detail I have in the past. Oh, the Colombian, yeah, people have been asking me about that. Wow, the Colombian peso continues to get strong. Whoa. I really thought it was going to reverse. Interesting. Yeah, it's breaking the lows right here. So, of course, I'm going to expect more strength. I'm going to expect more strength in the Colombian peso. It's doing great. It's breaking a very critical support line. Now, remember, this chart going down is the strengthening of the Colombian peso versus the US dollar. Yes, I am going to release Consensio. I really want to release it and watch it with everyone in real time. I think I'm just going to, after these conferences are over, I promise I will do it. I know I promised to do it this summer. I will do it this winter, and I'll probably release Hyperwave soon after that. I just want to watch it like you guys. And I'm just super busy with these conferences. And right after the conferences are done, maybe we'll do it for Christmas. Christmas, New Year's, I'm gonna take some time off, and we're all gonna watch Tyler Jenks's webinars together. Okay, before I get into the politics, let's do a poll. Do you guys want to hear my opinion on Russia, Ukraine, or no? I'm gonna do another poll. Should Tone talk about Russia versus Ukraine? Yes, no. Now, I'm gonna need a super majority here. Okay, if the yeses are above 60%, if it's close, the no's would win. I'm gonna be like the US Congress. I'm gonna need a super majority of 61% on this one. No, there is no hyperwave case for Bitcoin reaching 1,000. Okay, I want to talk about, we're transitioning into politics right now. After I check what the Fed's gonna do, now that the PPI numbers are out, the CPI numbers are out. Yes, but separate stream. Yeah, Fed's not raising the rate. They're not going to go against futures consensus. No way. Even Powell doesn't have those kinds of cojones. Okay, first things first. Let's talk about, I want to get my update on the news. I have not seen this tweet yet, and I'm going to review it with everyone else. US PPI matches the forecast of 2.2%. PPI is the producer price index. That's good to know. Initial job claims hit 2020 slightly below expected. Wow, the jobless, below expected, right? Jobless claims. That is so that's a bullish sign, right? You can also look at FinWiz. So you can see right there, that's a bullish sign. Initial claims coming in lower than expected. Of course, the government revises this to the upside later. I personally think this is the most corrupt government we ever had in the history of the United States. So they'll put out any numbers and then they revise them like 3 months later. European interest rates are 4.5% versus 4. Yeah, they raised, Europe raised interest rates. Tesla remains the most shorted stock. So you have to keep in mind that by Tesla remaining the most shorted stock, it's bullish. I don't want to get sense of every one of these headlines. It is incredibly bullish when your stock is super shorted. And here's why. Let's say shorting is not allowed. Okay, shorting is not allowed, right? That means, and now shorting is allowed. So 20% of the people decided to short the stock. In order to short the stock, they had to borrow that stock. Okay, so eventually they have to pay that stock back. So they have to buy back that stock. Okay, when a stock is super shorted, it usually ends up in a short squeeze, and Tesla will likely rise to screw all the shorts, kind of like AMC did. Okay. JP Morgan expects no more rate hikes, while I'm expecting rate hike later this year. If not, then January. I will give myself January as an excuse. So we have a Fed call in January. So if the Fed doesn't raise it this year, they'll raise it in January. I'm expecting one more rate hike, maybe even 2. China denies Apple ban allegations. This goes to my, the only thing I know about China, the only thing I am absolutely certain about China is that no one knows what the hell is going on in China. That's my only certainty, is that no one else knows what's going on in China. So I am not surprised that China denies that Apple is banned in China. And I'm also not surprised that if China banned Apple and then denied that it's banned in China, and then denied that it's banned in China. ARMS IPO valued at 54 billion. Boost says, I have no idea what ARMS is. Let me know when this IPO launches, because it sounds like this will be another stock to wait for a 50% correction off IPO and then buy it. Inflation slightly above expectations, but decreasing. Yeah, that I'll just need some kind of context. Alibaba debuts new AI model. Everyone's going to have an AI model. It's like the next blockchain. Notice the word blockchain has disappeared, and it's now AI. NVIDIA CEO continues share sale. Guys, he's selling like 0.0001% of NVIDIA shares. It's not a big deal. Stock futures are up. Oil hits a new all-time high. Yeah, oil is always going to hit a new all-time high. Senate discusses AI future with tech leaders. Yes, the Senate, where the average age is 103, is going to discuss the future of artificial intelligence. That's absolutely perfect. Goldman Sachs, AI stock revolution here to stay. I completely agree with Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs, I almost said. Chinese EV makers. By the way, China is about to become car manufacturer. Good job, US sanctions on that one. Goldman Sachs fired several executives from banking transactions. Oh, good. Now to clean up house. India's gold imports surged by 40% in August, and yet it's not raising the gold price. That is interesting, something to keep in mind. What about the crypto markets? FTX approved to sell 3.4 billion in assets. That's good. I'm sure none of it is so great. Let Solana go down. Binance US futures linked to CZ stake sale. What a surprise there. EU votes for new crypto tax rules by 2025. And the EU is going to become irrelevant, so who cares? 83% of short-term Bitcoin holders at a loss. Yeah, not surprised, but today's up move probably already moved this gauge up to 75% or so. Sony ventures into blockchain development. Sony's still around. Sony, you need to get any AIs. Ooh, sounds a lot like FTX. I would not have done that. CoinX. Oh man, I got a friend that recently got a job at CoinX. 54 million hack tied to Lazarus. All right, I'm gonna do a friend a favor. It's a really good friend of mine. I'm not gonna dox his name. A really good friend of mine asked for a favor. Wait, where did it go? Hold on. He sent me a list of addresses where the hacked coins went to, and asked me to like share it on my social media. I'm like, I can't do that. I mean, it kind of goes against what Bitcoin stands for, censoring transactions. But I would have flashed it on this YouTube screen, you know, the addresses where the hacked funds went to. In reality, however, I mean, that's the risk. The risk of being a crypto company, the risk of holding crypto is that when it gets hacked, there's no one to go to for help. That is the risk of that's the risk you take. FTX, $100 million weekly sale, hedges Bitcoin. I don't think they had any Bitcoin. I don't think this will affect Bitcoin. $500,000 Bitcoin fee overpayment. Nice. Good for the miners. Tokenizing illiquid assets may become a $16 trillion industry. Trillion? I think that's a little on the high side, but I can see that. I can see that becoming a big industry. Majors and alts see positive gains. Yep. Okay. Though that's our news. That's our news for the day. Now, one more topic before as we transition. Okay, we do have a super majority with 100 votes. We have almost 80%. People want me to talk about Russia, Ukraine. Before I talk about Russia, Ukraine, I want to talk about this specific post. This is a Martin Armstrong post from 2013. I think I credit this post. Look, I credit Martin Armstrong and his blog for altering my knowledge of economics, money, finance, the way I trade. Now, let me tell you where I don't agree or don't follow Martin Armstrong on. I don't follow Martin Armstrong on his knowledge of Bitcoin and crypto. I think I have a better expertise there. And I don't follow his trading algorithm that helps people buy and sell assets. I don't do those things, right? I make my own trading decisions off of my own thinking. I don't let others influence that. And I make my own decisions about the landscape because I've breathed it for a decade now. I don't let anybody influence that. However, almost everything else I know about economics, the history of money, currency, even government, came from reading this blog for over a decade now, okay? And this, I think, is one of the posts that made me stop and think and reevaluate everything I know about economics and how it merges with the political environment. Specifically, it was this paragraph. Now, remember, keep in mind the date. The date is November 2015. 2015, okay? This is almost 10 years ago, okay? And it's a great post. I'm going to throw these in the video description. And I'm going to let the AI read this for you, just this one area.
I have shown this chart on the collapse of the Roman monetary system many times. The collapse took place after the Emperor Valerian I was captured by the Persians. Can you imagine the blow to confidence if Putin captured Obama, turned him into his footstool, and the US was powerless to invade? Then you would see the collapse in the dollar just as the Romans saw the collapse in their currency. It is always a confidence game. As far as central banks buying US equities, no, they are not manipulating the market. Interest rates are way too low and equities offer a better return. Additionally, countries like Switzerland lost a fortune on the euro peg in the area of 50 billion Swiss francs. The total population of Switzerland is just over 8 million, which means they lost 6,200 francs per person or about $7,000 per person at the time. The euro is a failure. There is nothing left in the world for big money but the dollar. So the lack of alternative reserves have forced central banks to buy equities. They are not creating money to buy equities out of thin air. Anyone who claims that is revealing their lack of international knowledge and is judging the world by the Fed, who has the power to create money as an elastic money supply. I explained back in 2011 the structural difference between the ECB and the Federal Reserve. No one who claims all central banks have the same powers has done their homework. Some central banks buy US equities, sell bonds, and shift assets without creating money. It is just not true that all central banks can create money elastically. However, many have the powers to create money to achieve quantitative easing, but it is not unlimited in many cases, whereas the Federal Reserve does not require congressional approval to buy more debt since it has the power to create elastic money from the beginning. To carry out quantitative easing, central banks create money by buying securities, such as government bonds from banks with electronic cash that did not exist before. The new money swells the size of bank reserves in the economy by the quantity of assets purchased, hence the term quantitative easing.
All right, so actually, I started really enjoying this part about the euro and this. I actually didn't. I should really listen to this entire post myself. The part that I really wanted to highlight was just this, okay? And here's the chart he's referencing. Learning Roman history is absolutely incredible, along with its similarities to what's happening right now. So Rome went through a very turbulent time when Julius Caesar took power. So prior to Julius Caesar was the first dictator of Rome. The term dictator today has a very negative connotation. When the term dictator was used to describe Julius Caesar, it wasn't necessarily meant as a negative connotation. It meant as an alternative political government model where prior to Julius Caesar, Rome functioned as a Senate. Imagine American Senate or Congress without the president. Just the leader of the Congress was basically had a little more power, but not the power like the president does. And then you have a dictator model where in a country like Russia, China, they're more dictatorial, where the leader has a lot more power than the American president does. So, and then you have a country like Switzerland, which is more of a Roman style-ish maybe not a Roman democracy, but more of a democracy where the leader of Switzerland has a lot less power. So that was a transition from the Senate model to a dictator model when Julius Caesar took over. But look at the Roman money. Julius Caesar was he was assassinated in 44 BC, so he would have taken power a bit earlier than that. He was in power for almost 10 years. And so it would have been here. But you see the stability of the Roman currency. Roman currency falls apart. And Martin Armstrong explains that Roman currency fell apart with Valerian I. Valerian I, and if you click on Valerian I, it would take you to Martin Armstrong's write-up of Valerian I from 253 AD to 260 AD. This was following one of the great leaders of Rome. This is 100 years after the great Marcus Aurelius, who died in 180 AD. And you all know Marcus Aurelius. That's the beginning of the movie Gladiator, which was a remake of the movie The Fall of the Roman Empire. Both must-watch movies. The Fall of the Roman Empire was a movie from the 1960s. It's literally the same exact story as Gladiator, but it's told completely differently. Gladiator and the Fall of the Roman Empire literally take place with the same characters, Marcus Aurelius and the transition of power to Commodus, and I think it was Legatus. That was the general, but the Fall of the Roman Empire portrays the general as continuing being a general at odds with Commodus, and Gladiator portrays the general as being enslaved as a gladiator in his fight with Commodus. So it's just two completely different perspectives on Commodus becoming the first terrible Roman Empire emperor after the great Roman emperor, the last fifth great Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius. And there is so much good information on that. And it's here actually on Martin Armstrong's site. He literally talks about the history of every single Roman emperor, starting with Pompey. And that's the person that Julius Caesar took power from. So he starts it with Pompey in 48 BC and runs it all the way through Marcus Aurelius I, all the way into 400 AD. So it's a lot of reading, guys. This is why I use an e-reader, because it's a lot of reading. Like I said, I don't read books, but I read things like this. Yeah, I'll put these links in the description, right? So Valerian I, 253 to 260 AD, and if you look at the chart, it's right here, okay? 253. This is when the collapse of Rome happened, and he literally explains how, because he was captured, a Roman emperor captured, and there's nothing Rome can do to get him back, okay? Now, he tries to do an analogy. He says, what if Putin decided to capture Obama and there's nothing the US can do to get him back? Now, in the case of Obama, trickier. Certainly, it wasn't going to happen to Trump for multiple reasons. One, I think Trump is crazy. And two, Putin and Trump actually got along. But now we have Biden. So replace the word Obama with the word Biden. Remember when Biden went to Ukraine, Zelensky? Biden actually got permission from Putin to do that. What if Biden didn't get permission from Putin to do that? What if Biden showed up in Ukraine the moment Russia decided to attack Ukraine? And they ended up capturing both Zelensky and Biden while Biden is chatting with Zelensky in Ukraine. What exactly is America going to do to get Biden back from Russia, right? What are they going to do? Are they going to nuke the Kremlin with Biden in it and then exchange the Kremlin and Moscow for New York, Washington, Miami, Texas, LA, I can say something very inappropriate about San Francisco right now, but I don't want to get my channel banned. And all the other American cities, right? So this changed my entire view on what makes currencies collapse, what makes economies collapse, what makes nations rise and fall, what creates a new superpower, and what destroys a superpower. Okay. So my other major recommendation is this post. Well, obviously, you can read them by the Emperor. And this is specific to Valerian I. It's this: anatomy of a death crisis that only Julius Caesar understood. This is an incredible post. The thing is, if I click on the e, it's a 1 hour read at 1.3 speed. Okay, this is a long read. Even if it's reading to you, it'll take an hour. This thing is massive. Okay, but it's one of the best reads you will ever do in order to understand why economies and countries rise and fall. I'll throw these links in the video description, but you can also like Google these titles in the search bar and it will easily find them for you. Okay, and I might have thrown a couple of more posts here. Another great post that I saved, and this is from June of, where he talked about how this election is likely to be the most corrupt election in American history, and how his computer is predicting that Trump should win, but it doesn't mean that Trump should win because of how corrupt the election is likely to be, and talking about how this election is likely to be the start for the American empire. And he specifically talks about the panic of 53 BC, which is what led to Caesar's power, right? So all of these are connected. So everything here is connected. His 2020, along with his detailed post on the panic of 53 BC, which is not very long, but the post of specifically on the panic of 53 BC is a small subset of his incredibly long post titled "Anatomy of a Death Crisis," and what Julius Caesar had to deal with, and the financial reforms that Julius Caesar implemented in order to save Rome from the panic of 53 BC. Okay, and this is a more recent post that I have saved called "What Will Become Money Post 2032." He's also anticipating a full American collapse as the world superpower by 2032. Okay, so many of my views are that were shaped about why the US is going to collapse, but it's not going to be a hyperinflation environment until the dollar strengthens first, come from posts like this. If you are more of a visual person, obviously the movie Gladiator and the Fall of the Roman Empire are great. An incredible show, Rome TV show. Rome TV show did a great job of covering 20 years of history. I don't know if Wikipedia, the only thing I ever use Wikipedia for involves movies and stuff, right? Like cast and things like that. Never go to Wikipedia to learn your history. It is literally CIA propaganda on pretty much everything. But I'm curious if Wikipedia will tell us the beginning and the ending of Rome. So it starts, it starts in 52 BC. the show, Civil 9 BC Rome, but BC is counting down. So it starts in 52 BC. Caesar takes power around 52 BC, right after the panic of 53 BC, their financial problems. He was assassinated in 44 BC, and then the show continues on with Mark Antony and through Cleopatra, and so it ends in 30 BC. So the show is 20 years of Roman history from 52 BC. Okay, and then and this show is 20 years old now. It ran from 2005 to 2007, and a more recent show, which I did watch both seasons of, and the only reason I knew the show existed is because it was in Martin Armstrong's post. The show is called Domina. It's a little more woke than the shows from 20 years ago. It's woke. It's a little woke, but it picks up the Roman history literally at 30 BC. So it starts at like 32, 33 BC, just as the history that depicted in the show Rome ended. And it picks up the history, and it's actually somewhat historically accurate. As woke as it is, it's somewhat historically accurate. Yeah, James Purefoy was a great acting in that show. All the acting was great. I think this was the best show HBO ever did, prior to the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, and the first 3 seasons of what do you call it? Billions. Like the first Billions and the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones were better than Rome. Other than that, Rome hands down. Both of Rome's seasons were great. And then the show Domina takes over from the historical timeline. Okay, enough Roman history. And as you read about the history of Julius Caesar, somewhat compare him to Donald Trump a little bit, except Julius Caesar created his popularity based on him being a successful Roman general, and Trump created his popularity based on him being a successful businessman. And yes, Trump is a very successful businessman, contrary to the leftist propaganda of him being a failed businessman. Yes, he didn't start from nothing. He didn't start from zero. He started with some money, but what he did with that money is still very impressive. I haven't seen the last season of Billions. I mean, when the lead actor left, I kind of stopped caring. All right. We still have time for Russia, Ukraine. How long have I been on? Maybe it's enough. How long have I been on? Now for an hour. All right. TLDR and Russia, Ukraine. I'm going to give you my short view as to why I think Ukraine is doing really well and why this looks really bad for Russia. I know Russia is having positive progression up north, okay? The fact that Russia still can't close this area, the fact that Russia can't close this area is bad. They've also given up this ground here, is bad. The fact that Russia still can't capture Avdiivka is bad. Again, you need to shorten your front line. The fact that Ukrainians are still able to use this area to bomb the residential area in Donetsk is making Russia look very bad. Okay. Additional reasons why I think Russia is in a little bit of trouble. Yes, Ukraine hasn't made any significant progress. Yes, they're never going to make it to Mariupol, make it to the Sea of Azov. They're never going to make it to Melitopol. They're never going to make it. Okay. But they are able to use this narrative in the media very, very well that Ukraine is progressing. Ukraine is also able to use their drones very effectively and destroy significant Russian targets, not only on the west side of what was formerly Ukraine, that now is Russia, according to Russia. They're also continuously able to strike in traditional Russian territory. They are actually somewhat close to, and I'm using my words carefully here, to potentially destroy the Crimean Bridge altogether. They are somehow able to destroy Russian Navy in, I'm going to pronounce the name correctly, Sevastopol. Even I can't pronounce some of these names, right? Here it is. I just want to read it properly. Sevastopol port. So Ukraine is doing significant damage on Russian borders. Yes, Russia is doing more damage to Ukraine, but that's not the game within the war. Okay, a lot about war is perception, and the perception right now is grossly in Ukrainians' favor. Yes, Ukrainians are still probably dying at a rate of 2 to 3 Ukrainians to 1 Russian, but it's not 10 Ukrainians to 1 Russian. Here's another factor. It's a lot harder for Russia to recruit people into their military. Okay? It's a lot easier for Ukraine to recruit people into their military. I know Russia has a much bigger population. Let me explain what I mean. It's a lot easier for Ukraine to recruit people into the military because they can just throw 16-year-olds and 70-year-olds in the back of an unmarked van and drag them to the front line. No one questions this. No one complains about this in the global media. Ukraine can force every single Ukrainian citizen from any Western European country, put them into an unmarked van and drive them back onto the Ukrainian border and put them into the Ukrainian military. Russia cannot do this, okay? Russia already suffered huge losses of brain drain of Russian military-aged men that are smart, successful, and wealthy, of leaving the Russian territory because they don't want to go fighting in Ukraine, or they don't agree with Russia's fight in Ukraine to begin with, okay? Russia doesn't want to lose any more of their non-military trained civilians or volunteers. So it's a lot harder for Russia to drag Russians into the Ukraine conflict than it is for Ukrainians to put, as the old movie Star Wars Troopers, what movie where they were fighting aliens? Starship Troopers, right? Fresh meat for the grinder. That's a quote from a classic B movie called Starship Troopers. Starship. I keep saying Starship. Oh man, I just said it right. Holy shit. I need air conditioning in this room in Fatima. I actually don't like air conditioning. What did I just say the movie was? Anyway, fresh meat for the grinder. God, I hope this app grinder doesn't show up right now. That is not Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Right there. That's the video clip.
Fresh meat for the grinder, eh?
I was hoping it would be a slightly longer clip. It's basically a guy that had like one arm. He was no, that's enough. He was missing an arm. That's why he had a metal arm. Starship Troopers, thank you. Starship Troopers. He was missing an arm and both legs, and the other guy was like signing up to do the same job he was. Anyway, what I'm saying is, yes, lots of Ukrainians fled, but lots of Ukrainians still remain, and there is absolutely no stopping the Ukrainian authorities from throwing them into the military conflict. Russia is a lot harder. Also, Russia has lost Wagner's, right? So Wagner was Russia's best unit. They're not really involved anymore. So I think Russia is in a little bit of trouble here. And Russia doesn't want to destroy the Ukrainian electric grid. They don't want to destroy the Ukrainian water grid. They don't want to bomb the shit out of Kiev. And the reason why they don't want to do it is, one, there's still a lot of Russian supporting people in Ukraine that are stuck there. So they don't really want to kill their own people in Ukraine. And two, it's their neighbor. They'll have to, live with that neighbor eventually. See, America is not neighbors with Iran. They're not neighbors with Iraq. They're not neighbors with Libya. They don't have to worry. They can just bomb the shit out of those countries. It's a lot harder for Russia to bomb the shit out of Ukraine because it's their neighbor. They have to live with this land. Like America sent them depleted uranium shells. So now this land is going to be radioactive. Russia's not happy about this because this land borders Russia. What would cause it to finally end? The removal of American neocons. Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, complete removal of American top military, making Colonel Douglas McGregor the top U.S. general, getting rid of Milley, getting rid of all of them, getting rid of the top 20 people in charge of the United States right now will end this conflict immediately. Okay, so this is why my view is the Ukraine is doing incredibly well, and in order for Russia to end this, right? If the West continues to support Ukraine, in order for this conflict to end, here's what Russia would have to do. Russia would have to take all this territory, let me get rid of these things. Russia would have to take all this territory and this territory. Okay, so Russia would have to take all of this territory for the conflict to end. If the conflict, I think there is a chance they may also need this territory, but probably not. They probably would not need it. They would need a land bridge to Transnistria, and I think that's it. I don't think they'll need it. Shit, I can't do. I don't think they'll need that. Just those first two. And they would need to completely they would have to completely remove the current Ukrainian political class, and they would also have to destroy the Ukrainian military completely, so that the Ukrainian military is kind of like the Costa Rican military, where the military doesn't actually exist. You see, before this conflict, before the overthrow of Yanukovych, the Ukrainian president has always been Russian-leaning and friendly to Russia because of this chart that I constantly point to. Let me see here, pictures. If you look at this chart, this is the language that is spoken in Ukraine. Now, this is a 2003 chart. So obviously, these percentages would be slightly lower a decade later in 2013, but not much lower, okay? And because the Russian language was being eradicated by Ukraine, basically, it really started after the overthrow of the Russian-leaning president. So the reason why the Ukrainian president has always been Russian-leaning is because all of these people in these regions, so half of Ukraine was more, say, leaning Russian than they were leaning West Ukraine, okay? Therefore, the president was always Russian-leaning, but if these areas are now actual Russia, then if there was to be a fair election in Ukraine, the Ukrainian president would be anti-Russia. So that president would now try to build up another military, try to acquire a nuclear weapon to nuke Moscow. That is why now that this land is Russia, and it will remain Russia, Ukraine ain't ever getting it back. Like there'll be no planet before Ukraine. Like I've said it before, there's a higher probability that Alaska and Hawaii become Russia than there is that Crimea becomes Ukraine again. Like it's just it's geographically and politically impossible for Crimea to ever be Ukraine. It is literally impossible. Like I will say that, and a president of the United States will be Chinese before Ukraine ever gets Crimea back. I mean, it's just it's just an impossibility. It's an impossibility. So now that this area is Russia, these people would not be voting in a Ukrainian election. So if there was a clean and fair Ukrainian election, it would be very pro-Ukraine. Well, whatever is left of Ukraine, if there's anything left of Ukraine. So Russia will not actually allow that. If the United States doesn't end this conflict, doesn't completely, overturn their political view on this conflict, and Russia has to end the conflict, Russia would need to take all of this area, even the light green area. Kiev is like right here, right on this border. This is the river, the Dnieper River. They would have to take all of this land, and then they would have to basically control, they would have to basically control the Ukrainian government the way the World Economic Forum controls the Canadian government or the Australian government, basically. You have a young global leader in Trudeau in charge of Canada who is put there by Klaus Schwab. The same exact way Russia would need a leader in this area of Ukraine in order for Russia to feel safe that this area of Ukraine doesn't secretly have another biolab or come up with, a nuclear weapon to then attack Moscow because it's too close to Moscow. That's what would happen if Russia is to end the war. But this can end tomorrow if the United States wants it to end tomorrow. Now, what would have to be done in order for it to end tomorrow, right? And you guys may not like my answer. So first of all four regions, I'm not even talking about Crimea, that's Russia. All four of these regions that are in red, plus additional territory, actually their region. So let me get rid of this. How do I get rid of this? clear. That didn't work at all. Delete all points. That didn't work either. Cancel. All right, never mind. I'll just refresh. So in order for this to end right now, what would the United States have to tell Russia? You guys aren't going to like my answer. First off, number one, the 4 regions, and here's the border of those regions. These like gray lines, like this area, this area, this area, and this area. All 4 of these regions remain Russia. Ukraine immediately ceases all military activity. They put down all weapons, all American weapons, tanks, shells, everything. Leaves the Ukrainian border for good and never comes back. The Ukraine removes all military. Ukraine eliminates their military altogether. Zelensky steps down as president. There is a fair election in Ukraine, and Russia has a say in who the people are that would be up for election. Ukraine agrees never to be a military state. America agrees that Ukraine would never apply for NATO, and a NATO membership to Ukraine would never be granted. And I'm doing this on the fly, guys. This would be the minimum starting point. And I'll tell you what else Russia is going to ask for. Russia will probably say, we want Odessa. Russia will probably say, we want Odessa region. And they might say, we want the Kharkiv region. And Ukraine and America is going to say no. And I think they can negotiate that Russia will not get Kharkiv and Odessa. But if Russia is to continue, and they're able to continue, which I explained why it's challenging for Russia to continue right now, these are the next 2 regions they would take, Kharkiv and Odessa. But in order to take Odessa, they need to take Mykolaiv region as well. So is there a chance of the United States agreeing to this? Of course not. Of course not. So that's not going to happen. So we'll see how it goes. Now, if I was Russia, and Ukraine and America is coming to the negotiating table, I would ask for one more thing, and America would not be happy. I would demand that Estonia and Latvia and probably Lithuania be removed from the NATO charter. If I was negotiating, and like, again, this can only happen if Russia is on the border of the Dnieper River. If 2 years from now, Russia has taken over on a military perspective this area, and Russia has lost an additional 100,000 men while doing it, while taking over these regions. Because remember, Russia is going to lose men and women, mostly men, while taking these regions. I would demand that NATO remove itself from the Russian border altogether. Now, look, technically not on the Russian border, but Belarus is almost like an extension of Russia. And Poland is going to be a little bit trickier. But Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, you guys are way too close. And Finland is just irrelevant. So maybe it would do well, but they care way more about these countries. Russia is in no position to make such demands. Right. That's why I said if Russia makes it to the Dnieper River, they will be in position to make such demands, right? They're not in that position now. Now, the best Russia can hope for in negotiations is to get rid of the Ukrainian military, get an agreement that Ukraine will not be in NATO, and retain the 4 regions. But if Russia takes over additional, and then Ukraine is coming to the negotiating table, then they will be in the position to negotiate the removal of NATO from their borders. But I agree, they're in no position to negotiate this right now. Absolutely not. Couldn't agree more. Is any of this going to happen? No, no, of course not. That would be, a real negotiation. Now, what I think is going to happen, I don't know, because what I laid out, as Ukraine continues to gain ground and continues to even out the kill ratio and continues to be, propagandized that they're winning, it makes it a lot harder for Russia, and it makes Russia weak on the global stage. It makes them look weak to China. It makes them look weak to India. It makes them look weak to North Korea. Not that anyone cares what North Korea is. Collapse of the US completely clears the chessboard. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other comments before I end the stream? I guess we can wrap it up. Sergio writes, I work with a guy who worked for the Ministry of Culture and Information of Kiev back in 2014. Tough talking about this with him. Depends what side he's on, right? Guys, I don't give a shit why XRP has volume. I really couldn't care less. All right, looks like we're good to go. Do I have another question? Oh, that's a good question. Tone, what is the #1 thing you disagree with the Durant's coverage of the Ukrainian offensive situation? Asking because that is the only source I care to follow. Right. Well, it's exactly what I just said, right? The Durant seems to be ignoring, like I really like watching Military Summary. I think it's the best channel on this topic. Oh, before I watch, okay, real quick thing, really short video. Just And listen, I'll just say, listen to what he says, but he says it in Russian. Read to what he says.
Извините, у нас то, что касается преследования Трампа, ну это, конечно, для нас то, что происходит в сегодняшних условиях, на мой взгляд, это хорошо, потому что это показывает всю гнилость американской политической системы, которая не может претендовать на то, чтобы учить других демократии. То, что происходит с Трампом, это преследование по политическим мотивам своего политического конкурента. Что касается частного бизнеса Илона Маска, он, безусловно, выдающийся человек. Это надо признать. Но я думаю, что это и признают во всем мире. Ну, активный, талантливый бизнесмен. У него многое получается, в том числе и при поддержке американского государства. Мы со своей стороны тоже намерены развивать эту работу, и в Роскосмосе принято уже решение, поддержанное правительством, чтобы привлекать. Мы уже привлекаем частных инвесторов в эту сферу и достаточно.
So the channel that I watch before I watch the Duran, right? So yes, I watch the Duran, but I get most of my information on what's going on the ground from a channel called Military Summary. And the Duran had him on the show before. Now, I will admit he's a little bit, he tries to be as neutral as possible, but when you watch enough of his videos, you know that he's a little more pro-Russia than pro-Ukraine, which I'm okay with, right? Like, no one is unbiased, no one is neutral. I'm okay with him being a little bit more pro-Russia, as long as the coverage he provides is neutral, unbiased on the coverage part. And he does actually his own thinking. He tries to see what caused this and what it's leading to, and he makes his own analysis of what's happening on the ground. And he's showing you all the success that Ukraine is having, all of the Russian equipment that Ukraine is destroying, the attacks that Ukraine is doing on Russian territory and on Russian naval bases. So that's what the Duran is missing. The Duran only talks about the problems that the Ukrainian military is having. The Duran never mentions the problems of the Russian military is having. And yes, the Russian military is having some problems. They're not as big as the Ukrainian problems, but there are some problems for Russia in this conflict. And the Duran either glances over it, they don't mention it sometimes, they glance over it at other times, and they downplay it in other times. So that's my only criticism of the Duran, is that they downplay some of the problems that Russia is currently going through, and they make it sound like there's no issues in Russia. So that's my only criticism of the Duran. Other than that, the show is amazing. I watch all of it. All right, guys. On this note, I'm gonna get going. 2 channels I recommend. Oh, same thing with same thing with Brian Bolitic. Same thing as the Duran, right? He never talks about. He only talks about the Ukrainian problems. He never talks about the Russian problems. Even though, like I said, the Russian problems are small, but they're small compared to the Ukrainian problems. But they are not zero. They are not non-existent. So I wish Brian Bolitic talked a little bit more about the Russian casualties and the Russian equipment lost, and how important is that equipment in the areas of where that equipment's being lost. And the thing that I discussed, where Ukraine can easily put another 500,000 people because they grab them off the street. But Russia has a problem putting another 500,000 people into their military, because that is a not very popular way to do it. Russia relies mostly on volunteers and recent army military trained personnel, while Ukraine doesn't give a shit. And the more Ukrainians die, the better it is for Zelensky, because A, more corruption money for him, less money to share with his people, the more Ukrainians die. And also, the more Ukrainians die, the more he can beg around the world how horrible Russians are killing Ukrainians. So Ukrainian deaths actually are like, the more Ukrainians die, the better it is for the Ukrainian president, from his personal corruption perspective, and also from his political global stance. But in Russia, it's the opposite. The more Russian citizens die, the worse it is for the president of Russia, which is Putin, and the worse it is for Russian global standing. So, and no one talks about this. Not Brian Bolitic, not the Duran, not Judge Napolitano. Again, same issue. So that's the one criticism I have of these channels, is that they never talk about any Russian issues. And Russia has issues, right? They, even when it came to the Prigozhin situation, all of these channels downplayed the Prigozhin situation. I thought it was a much bigger deal than channels like Napolitano, New Atlas, and the Duran made it sound like. I thought it was a much bigger deal. And you're seeing it on the battlefield. Without Wagner, the Russian military has stalled. Without the Wagner, that was the most competent military unit. And yes, you can say Russia went into a defensive position now that Ukraine is on the counteroffensive. But if Wagners were fully on board and the way they were 4 months ago, maybe Ukraine would have gained zero ground, and Russia could have taken, Avdiivka by now, which again, I'm very surprised they haven't done yet. And that's probably because Wagner's are out of the fight. So these are the kinds of things that these channels will also. JJ, there is one thing I know. There's two things I know, right? One thing I know is that no one knows what's going on in China. And the other thing I know, that the corruption in Ukraine has no back. Whether FTX exists or doesn't exist, matter. It's the other I know for sure in life is the Ukrainian corruption does not have a ceiling. FTX, not that critical. All right, guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all on the next one.